Could Sunday's Old Firm game be the key in the title run-in? And at the bottom, who will be left in 11th place after this weekend? I'm Andy Burke, and alongside Scott Allan and Andy Halliday, we'll guide you through a massive Premiership weekend. Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Friday the 8th of May. And what a weekend we've got in store.
It's not enough to play 45 minutes on a high level. You have to play 90 minutes on your highest level. And I think this is, if you're honest to each other in the last 3 games, not always enough to take 3 wins.
Can Rangers bounce back from that defeat to Hearts as they visit Celtic? Or will Celtic victory keep them in contention at the top of the table?
Well, we've just got to, really, it is honestly just taking each game on its merit. That's all you really can do. You can't control anything else,
And there is as much drama in the playoff battle at the bottom as St Mirren host Kilmarnock, who will come out on top in what could be a key moment in the season.
The way I look at it is we're going to St Mirren to win the game. I've told the guys that I wanted 4 wins from what was left. Didn't get the 5 I wanted. We started off really well and we'll chase St Mirren down to try and get that win.
We'll also talk about the situation at Livingston after Marvin Bartley's shock resignation. We've got everything you need to know about this weekend coming up.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Right, good morning. Great to have your company today. Delighted to be joined by Scott Allan. Scott, how are you getting on? Looking forward to this weekend?
I am, yeah. I think obviously first of all a big one for me looking at that game at Fir Park, Motherwell v Hearts. Listen, Hearts had a good result against Motherwell a few weeks back, but I think you see with the interview yesterday with James Berto-Askew, he's really up for this one. It'll be a really difficult game for Hearts to follow up their wins against Hibs and Rangers, and then obviously the Celtic Rangers game on Sunday, and it's one of them. I think Rangers now trying to derail Celtic's chances of staying in the title and get that second spot.
Yeah, Andy, this season has been coming to the boil really nicely, and this weekend is just absolutely huge at both ends of the table.
Yeah, massive, and it felt like we were looking forward to the post-pitch fixtures for so long, and if the first 2 game weeks are anything to go by, we're in for another cracker this weekend, so some huge ties with ramifications both at the top end of the table and the bottom end of the table. And one thing's for sure, I've no doubt whatsoever there's going to be shots coming that we're talking again on Monday.
Well, let's start with that game at Celtic Park on Sunday, Celtic versus Rangers, Scott. And I think this one is really hard to predict. There's so many things round about this one. Celtic obviously still very much in the title race, but still a sense, I think, amongst the Celtic fans that they're still not full of confidence that their team is hitting the heights that they can and maybe should be at this stage of the season, but they're grinding out the victories. Rangers title perhaps just about gone for them, but they've, as you said at the top, they've got that motivation of derailing Celtic season. How do you see this one?
I think it's definitely going to be one of the ones where it's on the day who defends better out both teams. I don't think either teams of this season have defended anywhere near the levels that you'd maybe expect of clubs that size, and when they're obviously competing for a league. Celtic in spells against Hibs done some good things, mostly down to Maeda with just his energy and his pressing. I thought Alistair Johnston coming back into the side did give them a much better outlet down the sides, and that then leads to the first goal because he gets down the sides, he looks to get beyond, plays a lovely 1-2 and then picks out Maeda in the box. Out with that though, when Hibs go down to 10 men, I didn't think Celtic moved the ball quick enough. I didn't think they were hugely creative all the same, and then to flip that with Rangers, a lot of people speaking about how good Rangers were in the first half. I wasn't one of them who thought Rangers were fantastic in the first half. I just thought they were a decent version of themselves against, for me, it was probably one of Hearts' worst 45 minutes throughout the season. And once Hearts tweaked a few things, Rangers just didn't have the answers. Real lack of creativity in the team, and defensively, all over the place for both goals for me. So it is a game where on the day whoever defends better and takes their chances will come out victorious, or if they both don't, we could see another draw again this season.
Yeah, on that defensive point, Andy. Daisen Maeda has been a thorn in Rangers' side in recent times, and there's a sense that he's maybe been getting back to the form that we know he can deliver, but missed a few chances against Hibs, but he gets in those positions that cause defences problems. How big a player do you think he'll be on Sunday?
Massive. I even think when Daisen Maeda's not in particularly great form, I feel as if he's always rising at the occasion of this game. You mentioned earlier, Andy, about Celtic not hitting their heights. I think Celtic are pretty much at their heights. I just don't know if this team have got another gear or two within them, because we've seen a well below par Celtic side for such the majority of this season. But what I will say is I think they've hit new heights out of possession. I think they play with a lot more energy, and I feel like for me that's probably this team's strength at this moment in time. And I thought of that as down to Daisen Maeda's energy up front. So he's up against two centre-halves and Nasser Jigan and Manuel Fernandes that are extremely athletic. I think they've had plenty of praise this season, but one thing for sure, I think they lack concentration at times. And I think with somebody like Daisen Maeda, it's not going to give you a minute's peace throughout the course of the 90 minutes. They have to, not only do they have to be at the top of their game, but they have to be top of their concentration levels for such a large spells of the game. So I think it's going to be interesting. For the longest time we felt as if it was a 3-horse title race. We now think it's 2. The fact of the matter is Rangers have an opportunity to make it down to 1. I think if Rangers win this game at the weekend, then the trophy could be heading to Tynecastle, depending on how their result goes on Saturday, obviously at Fir Park. But one thing's for sure, I think there's going to be plenty of drama. It's probably not what they were obviously looking for, but the fact of the matter is Rangers' trophy now is to make sure that Celtic don't win the league. So that's exactly what they're going up against on Sunday.
I wonder how you think Scott Martin O'Neill will go with that forward line, because we saw Maeda at Easter Road through the middle, as we say, missed a few chances. He then goes out to that position on the left, which those runs coming infield cause defences all sorts of problems. You've got Kelechi Iheanacho, who came off the bench, very composed finish, and that composure, it's something that maybe Celtic have been lacking at the top end for most of the season. But the question with him is, can he start games? Can he last in games? How do you think that forward line, how do you think Martin O'Neill will maybe look to shape that on Sunday?
Listening to his presser after the game last week, I don't think Iheanacho starts the game. And for me, I think they're a much more attacking threat when he is on the pitch. But the way he was talking, it seemed to me that he sees him impacting games late on. There's no getting away. He is the best finisher they have at the club. He's an instinct striker. You see that with the goal, sees it coming out there. Sometimes dead easy to misjudge them, and obviously slots away nicely. I agree with you, Andy. I thought when Maeda was out on the left, it's the first time you've kind of seen him making that out to in run. I think when you're playing against Rangers, if you can create that opening for that little clip between right centre back and right back, there is space to then play. But I do think he'll start with Maeda up front just to set off the press and get that energy that he's seen in Celtic the last home game against Falkirk. Donetke would be the question mark for me. I just don't think he's influencing games enough from that left hand side position. So James Forrest again coming on, having an impact as well. I do think he does what he says on the tin. He squares guys up, gets down the line and wants to put crosses in the box. So that'll be the only question mark, whether he starts Donetke or not. Like I said, I do think Alistair Johnston is a massive bonus for Celtic, and add that to Maeda's press. At the same time, I think he called it, he had some really good chances against Hibs, and he just didn't take them with any sort of conviction. So Maeda's at that stage of the season where, yes, his pressing's got better, but he still needs 4 or 5 chances to take one from me. So he does have problems, but I don't see an actual start of the game purely based on how Martin O'Neill spoke about him after the game last week.
Well, one man who's come up big in the recent derby matches is Yusuf Chermiti. Andy, he's a real frustrating player because he does things that not a lot of players can do, but there's games that he kind of just disappears. I remember one moment at Tynecastle, he got himself in a great position. He turned his defender inside out and he put himself in a great position to put a dangerous cross in or maybe even get a shot away, and he goes back to beat the defender one more time and loses the ball. And just little moments like that I think are frustrating for the Rangers support. But he had a big impact the last time these two sides met at Celtic Park, and he has come up with goals in the big games this season.
Yeah, he's an enigma, but it feels like Rangers strikers always are, Andy. It feels like they have been over the last few years. But I think over the course of the piece, I think you've got to look at Yusuf Chermiti as one of the real positives for Rangers this season. I know he splits opinion, but at 21 years of age, now over the course of the season scored a decent amount of goals. I think for a Rangers number 9, I do think their numbers need to increase, which I've no doubt they will, given he's going to get older, going to get more experience. And Rangers over the summer, I've no doubt whatsoever, will be trying to add more of a creative spark to this side. But I do feel that these games certainly suit him. He's someone that has loads of athleticism, and you're playing in these games that quite often there'll be Celtic defenders defending their halfway line. It allows that space and opportunity for Yusuf Chermiti to exploit it and run in behind. So you do look at a couple of players within Yusuf Chermiti and Mikey Moore as real key players for Rangers in these games. Mikey Moore has been that real creative outlet in the left-hand side for Rangers, and Yusuf Chermiti's obviously been the main source of goals. But I don't think any doubt whatsoever. I agree with Scotty. I think Alistair Johnson coming back to Celtic is a real added bonus. But I think Tour Romans is the exact same as that for Rangers. I look at Alistair Johnson, Tour Romans compared to the players that have been playing in that position, whether it's been Jade McGoma or Anthony Ralston, Colby Donovan, where the Anthony Ralston, Jade McGoma types, they're players that want to play behind the game. They want to receive the ball to feet and try and play forward. But you look at Tour Romans and Alistair Johnson, they want to be the creators. They want to be the ones that run in behind and affect games, even at that fullback position. So I do feel like they two players, I think, are real bonuses for both clubs going into the game. And it's just down to who plays better, who does the basics better, who settles into the game. I think there's so many mitigating factors when it comes into this game, but I think it's a really difficult one to predict. Like he says, it's not been two high-flying teams this season, and I suppose it's just down to who turns up on the day.
Yeah, so much riding on that game. Celtic versus Rangers. You'll be able to listen to it live on Sunday Sports Sound, on air from 11:30. That's followed by Off the Ball at 3 o'clock. Of course, a lot will depend on what happens at Fir Park on Saturday evening. Hearts travel to Motherwell, and Scott, Hearts must just be full of belief at the moment. The victory over Rangers, but I think the nature of it, you said near the top that it was maybe one of Hearts' poorest performances in that first half, but the way they turned that round, the second half performance was so good, and you just felt the belief, not only from the players, but coming through from the fans in the stands on Monday. They must feel like they're not far away now.
Yeah, I think they'll know how important this game is on Saturday, and they know the challenge that they'll face. They'll have to look back to that Tynecastle game where Maswinisi had a few real chances to put Motherwell out of sight, but what Hearts have done and what Hearts have done all season is shown resilience. I think that's the key word, and the fact that between fans, ownership and players, there's a real connection there, and it just shows you how important that is. We all talk about ability at times and players going for this amount of money, but see, when you have a connection throughout a group, it just gets you through, and that is how Hearts' season has been. They've just kept on answering the questions. To add to that, they get two best strikers in the league. Players go out, Harry Millen goes out, Stephen Kingsley comes in. He's absolutely fantastic when he comes in, and that's down to that team bonding that Derek McInnes has created there, and you add the fans on top of that. It was absolutely bouncing on Monday night, and Lawrence Shankland with that goal. I think that's the difference between the three sides for me. That is a real striker's finish. So many times you see someone get blow that right over the bar, and Lawrence Shankland just steps on it as good as you would want for a finisher. If any kids are watching that game, head over the ball, body shape, and slams into the bottom corner. And when you've got strikers who are in that vein of form, I just think there's always a way where Hearts look, if they get a chance, that they're going to take it. And again, second half to come back after being so poor in the first half, they'll just be full of confidence. So it'll be on to the next game. Can we get the 3 points? Like I said, I think it'll be a really difficult for one. I think the last time Hearts went there, they really sat off the game. And you'll probably go into that a little bit more in a minute. But it'll be a game where Jens thinks there'll be elements of Hearts' team that he can exploit and cause chances, because you've got 4 of the Player of the Year nominees all in the one game. And Braga, for me, I actually thought it was one of these quieter games in terms of influence the game on Monday. But that's the difference when you've got 2 up that top end of the park who can affect games. And Shankland obviously gets the glory against Rangers on Monday night. But a really difficult game, but one where Hearts will be full of belief.
Yeah, and Andy, we know the history that's waiting for Hearts, the first league title since 1960, the first non-Old Firm team in 40 years to win the league. It's all there for them, and I think a lot of people have been waiting for that weight of expectation to start affecting them, and maybe at halftime at Tynecastle on Monday they thought it was finally there. Hearts were finally starting to feel the pressure and starting to wobble a wee bit, but coming through that test and that sort of game, they seem to be dealing with any late season nerves pretty well at the moment.
Yeah, and it's mad that we still have doubts in our mind whether they can still go the full way, given that they've been top of the table now for 30 weeks. I think it's been an incredible job what Derek McInnes and his players have done, and I think we're going into a game at the weekend where it's been 3 unbelievable fixtures between Motherwell and Hearts this season. I think it's going to be really, really exciting for the neutral, and I think it's a really difficult one to call. I think Hearts have got so many threats within their team. Motherwell have got so many threats individually, but as a collective as well, have had a lot of praise this season, and quite rightly so. And I think it'll be very interesting to see what Derek McInnes' approach will be. I've no doubt whatsoever they'll have a game plan to win the game. But how does that look for Hearts? I think the 2 games at Tynecastle went really man for man focused. They've tried to be on the front foot. They've tried to make Motherwell defend at all times. Whereas at Fir Park, I thought they were a wee bit more pragmatic, a wee bit more compact in their shape, and then tried to counter-attack at times, try and be a threat for set pieces. And I think Hearts will probably be of the mindset that if they win this game on Saturday, it's another giant leap towards winning this league title. I was on Hearts for a long period of time and I came off them right at the poorest moment, because if you look at the last 3, talking about expecting them to falter, they've beat Motherwell, they've beat Hibs at Easter Road, and they've then followed that up by beating Rangers at Tynecastle. That's been their last 3 victories. So they're going in with this fixture with an incredible run of form. But like he says, I find it very difficult for anyone to rule out Motherwell, and quite rightly so. I think everyone felt going into this split that they will have a big say on where this title lands. They've already played a huge part in Rangers' downfall, and they've still got Hearts and Celtic to play.
Yeah, and plenty to play for themselves as they look to wrap up 4th place in the table. We can hear live commentary of Motherwell versus Hearts on Sportsound on Saturday evening on Radio Scotland Extra from 7 o'clock. Right, let's turn our attentions to the bottom of the table. We'll get to St Mirren and Kilmarnock in just a moment, but some news that came out yesterday, Scott, and that was that Marvin Bartley has resigned from Livingston. I think a move which caught a few people by surprise. He's gone along with his coach, Neil Hastings. What's your take on this situation, Scott, and where this leaves Livy?
I think for me, looking at Livingston before Marvin Bartley came in, I felt they would have been relegated about 4 weeks ago, if I've been totally honest. I think what he has brought is he's brought an energy. I watched him in games against Celtic, Rangers and Hearts, and I felt that you could see they'd a structure, and he'd set up presses where he felt if he got the press right, they could create chances, and they did in the games. But ultimately, they've just not won enough games this year. I am of the belief, I do think Marvin Bartley got a tune out of them. I think there's just far too many draws throughout the course of the season. But some of the performance in there, as you say, Andy, were a bright spark in what's been a really poor season for Livingston. Davy Martindale will be looking at it next year. I would imagine as if they get it right again with recruitment, they'll have a chance of coming straight back up, similar to what St Johnstone have done this year. But I think what was left to Marvin Bartley when he came in wasn't players that he had kind of recruited. He has to then try and pick them up. And for me, I did think there was an upturn in performance. I just think throughout the course of the season, when you have lost that many games, mentality-wise, once it gets to the later stages where they were conceding goals, it's very hard to change that when it's really rotted within the club throughout the season.
Do you think, I think a lot of people felt that Marvin Bartley had maybe earned a shot, Andy, at taking Livy in the Championship next season and seeing what he could do? Were you surprised when this news came out, and did you think he'd done enough to earn that shot?
Nothing should surprise us this season, Andy, but funny enough, I was still surprised, because you just felt as if it was going to be a natural transition for Marvin Bartley to lead Livingston next season. Almost felt as if he was on a bit of a trial period. this season, and if it was a trial period, you look at what he'd done over the space of 11 games, taking over a team that could not buy a win. He's done a brilliant job since he's came in terms of the wins column's not changed significantly, but like Scotty said, been much harder to beat, taking up points on the road as well, which Livingston haven't done all season long. And for me, I just felt as if it was almost a stick-on from to be leading Livingston next season. So certainly a really surprise. I'm sure we'll hear more about it. I think all we've seen so far has just been a statement from Marvin Bartley. I'm sure David Martindale will come out and have his say and talk through Livingston and his side of things. But I think Livingston fans will be disappointed as well because I think Marvin's added a lot of spirit to that Livingston side. I think they've went down fighting given how the last couple of months have went. But certainly surprised when I seen the news yesterday.
Yeah, Marvin Bartley and his assistant Neil Hastings put a statement out and essentially saying they had been asked to reapply for the jobs that they're in at the moment, having been under the impression that they would be allowed to go on next season. So clearly it's a confusion behind the scenes there. Livingston released a statement essentially saying any new coach would have to work within the structure that they envisaged for the club. So something is going on behind the scenes there, and I'm sure more will come out, as you say, Andy, in the fullness of time. We shall watch and wait with interest on that situation at Livy. Right, let's talk about the game in Paisley, lads, because this is absolutely massive. St Mirren versus Kelly, Andy. This is huge, isn't it? I mean, this one could really go a long way to deciding who finishes in that playoff spot.
Yeah, it could, Andy, and much at the top end of the table. It's another difficult one to predict because it's difficult to make a case for either side winning, just given St Mirren just can't score a goal. I mean, I think it's 27 league goals all season long. I think that the next lowest goals is Dundee, who are 8 better, I think, than St Mirren. And you feel at this moment in time that any time St Mirren go 1-0 down, you just can't see a way back for them, such as the lack of creativity in the team. Now, that being said, Kilmarnock have only managed 9 away points all season. So I do edge towards Kilmarnock. I know, like I says, that stat there with the away record's damning, but I think momentum's such a key thing when you come into this stage of the season in these big games. And I thought that result last week against Dundee United at home was massive for Kilmarnock. And not only the result, I thought the manner of it as well. I thought really aggressive, really front-footed, looked as if they were up for the fight, and managed to score 3 good goals within it as well. So if you've got a side there that have got goals throughout their team, and you've got a Hugo up front, a Bruce Anderson, a Finlay Curtis that can chip in with goals as well, I then look at St Mirren and just think whether the goal's going to come from for them. So, and you must say as well, Andy, like you said, I think a win for Kilmarnock. We only take 2 games remaining, and that'll be 4 points adrift. I do think that all but, for me, secures St Mirren in that 11th spot. So crazy when you think the journey they've been on this season, obviously winning the League Cup final at the end of last season, but another massive game at the Smizer Stadium.
I just wonder psychologically, how big will that have been for Kelly to lift themselves above St Mirren going into this game and knowing probably for them a draw is a decent result in Paisley? How do you think that affects the dynamics?
I just think when you're Kilmarnock and you come in last week and you see St Mirren score, obviously off the back of your own performance, that's a huge momentum lift. I think they add to that the way Neil McCann is running out of changing room. I've been part of that. It just gives him all the extra motivation that he needs, and I do feel top end of the park Kilmarnock have more quality than St Mirren. I would echo what Andy says. You look at St Mirren creativity wise, even throughout their squad, I don't really see anybody who looks like they can come on and really change a game out with your two up front, which we've seen for large parts of the season, but they are very much so a hit or a miss for St Mirren. But there's a lot of pressure riding on the game. It'll be interesting to see what the crowd are like. But I think that's a game for me. I know it's quite difficult to predict, but I just feel off the back of last weekend and a Neil McCann dugout, I see Kilmarnock coming through that.
Right, let's wrap up the rest of the weekend's games, lads. Scott, Falkirk versus Hibs, and there's a bit riding on this now. Hibs are suddenly looking in the rear view mirror, and there's Falkirk just 2 points behind in the battle for a European place. I mean, how big a game is this, and where do you feel Falkirk and Hibs are at the moment? Who do you see as favourites?
It's a huge game. I think Falkirk are favourites off the back of the result last week, and then you add to that Hibs 3 defeats in a row. guys getting sent off week on week, costing them in big games. It's never really gave them a chance to get a real foothold in the game and go and create and have large spells of possession. But I think both teams, Dave Gray, John McGlynn, will understand how important this game is for both teams, for where they finish in the league. I think Falkirk's season has been incredible. I think they felt after they lost to Dunfermline, you'd maybe see them start to ease off a bit, just subconsciously with the players, with the effort they'd put in. But no, obviously that performance last week, fantastic. And Hibs have been a strange one all season for me, because I do feel as if they've got a really good squad. But I think if you're Dave Gray, you're pulling your hair out just for some of the sending offs that they've had over the course of the last few weeks. And they have been sending offs, that's the thing, but a real frustration. You can't get any real sustainability in attacks. The boy Owen Eldon, I was really excited to watch him over the last few weeks, and because of the numerical disadvantage, you've never been able to see him in areas where he can really go and affect the game, and he's one who's spoken about who's going to be a real top talent for Hibs. So a game I think Falkirk go in as favourites. If Hibs keep 11 players on the pitch, they are more than capable of producing a result.
Well, Aberdeen versus Dundee United, traditionally one of the big fixtures in Scottish football, but not a huge amount riding on it this weekend, Andy. But what do you make of those two sides this season? And I suppose at this stage of the season, they're clear of relegation. They've obviously missed out in the top six. It's maybe just about rounding the season off on a high, putting one over in your rivals and getting a bit of feel-good going.
Well, Aberdeen fans will be delighted that there's nothing riding on it, because for the longest time, it felt as if they could get dragged into that 11th spot. I think the beauty for Aberdeen and Dundee United at this minute in time is they can already have almost both eyes on the summer and try to recruit players, because that's exactly what both teams need. Not only recruit players and bring players in, they need to try and shift boys that are on big money and long contracts as well. So I think both are on good form. Aberdeen have obviously couldn't buy a win for such a long period of time, went back-to-back wins, followed it up with a draw last weekend against Livingston, and Dundee United are obviously back off the back of a resounding Dundee derby win, and then a disappointing result at Rugby Park as well. So listen, nothing to play for, but both will want to try and finish as high as possible with that 7th plate still in their berth. I know Dundee United are obviously really strong favourites for it, but I think for the two clubs, it's get the next 3 games out the road and focus on try to have a better season next year.
And just lastly, Scott, Dundee versus Livingston. We've spoken about Livingston already. Dundee 6 points clear of the playoff spot. I don't think they're going to get dragged in at this stage, but it'd be nice for them to get that win that just absolutely puts them clear and lets them know that they're going to be in the top flight next season.
Yeah, and again, I think Stephen Presley will be saying to his players, obviously Livingston already relegated, expect to go and win that game quite comfortably with all the kind of upheaval Livingston are going through at this moment. And it's been an interesting season at Dundee, because Stephen Presley came in under a bit of pressure from fans. A lot of people didn't want him as the appointment, and I actually think as the season's progressed, there's been a lot of really good performances. It's just, again, you talk about that consistency thing throughout the league. It's been the same with Dundee. I think a highlight obviously coming back in the derby against United about 6 weeks ago with the 2 late goals, and I do think they've got quality at the top end of the park. But I think Stephen Presley will see that game as obviously get them secure, and then they'll look to strengthen get into next year, because there is some good players at Dundee.
Well, what a weekend we have in store, and it all starts with the Saturday show at 9 o'clock on BBC Radio Scotland with Stephen and Amy, joined by Jordan Robertson. That's followed by Off the Ball at midday, and Sports Sound kicking off at 2 o'clock. And you can watch Arbroath versus Dunfermline in the Premiership playoff tonight from 7:15 on the BBC Scotland channel. That's all we've got time for. Scott Allan and Andy Halliday, it's been a pleasure, lads. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone. But for now, on the pod, from Scott, from Andy and from me, thanks for listening.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.